Yeah, of course, it's all scary. I think even there's always a level of anxiety when you're operating your own business, right? I remember like the early days of Lee Ho Fook. It was very daunting because it was my first time being a head chef. It was my first time owning my own business.
Hey, we're here today with Victor Liong. He's a renowned chef in Melbourne. He has the restaurant Lee Ho Fook. It's a two-hat restaurant. It's beautiful. We had a great conversation today with him about life, maintaining relationships, work-life balance, his new projects, what he has up and coming, and just overall chefing and his career and what he's done so far. Yeah, it was
Building
really
a team, just like spoke a little bit about building a team, branding, marketing, how it plays a role in his business.
He's a really interesting guy, and we had a fantastic conversation with him. And it's definitely worth a listen for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you start with. Okay, let's go.
We're already going. Is everything recording?
Yeah.
Oh, we're
Okay,
recording.
we're rolling.
Damn. All right.
Let's do it.
Let's go. All right. Victor Liong,
Welcome to Hot
Famous
Media
chef.
Podcast. Yeah. First episode.
first ep.
Yeah.
Good to have you on.
No, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming out here. Not so far for you though, obviously.
No, it's all, we're here to, just chat about, actually, I have no idea. So, let's get yeah, what do you guys want to know?
I think the first thing we wanted to chat about was obviously, where you have positioned yourself as a chef, you weren't aiming for anything mediocre, I guess. I mean, you position yourself as a pretty high-end chef. And we wanted to know, where did that come from? Like what drove you to become you?
Yeah.
And start these restaurants and create these fantastic menus.
Well, I think, when I first started cooking, I've always so we'll bring it back to almost the start of it, right? I knew I wanted to be a chef when I was very young, right? I reckon maybe at the age of around 10, 12 years old. I grew up in Sydney, very working class, quite a big family. I've got two sisters and a brother. My mum was a stay-at-home mum, and she's a very good cook. And she had we had a lot of cookbooks at our house growing up, right? And I used to always kind of look through them and see these dishes and recipes in there that just looked amazing because it's just, I grew up in a relatively Chinese household, eating a lot of kind of Chinese food, and to see all these different amazing dishes from around the world was very kind of, it's fascinating to me. And I've always wanted to experience them because, when you're growing up, you're always hungry,
Yeah.
and then working class, you never, you know what I mean? Like you're working class, you're never really, exposed to these grand restaurants. And I saw it as an opportunity to be able to kind of experience the world a little bit. And then, I went to university, I finished, and then I had the opportunity to just be an apprentice chef. So I started.
So what did you study at university?
I studied business management.
Okay.
Like a classic,
So you didn't plan to be a chef when you were at uni?
Well, I just had to do my job as a migrant son and go to university to keep my parents happy.
Yeah.
And I think I still wanted to be like I told myself, I said, look, if I finish my university degree and I still wanted to cook or be a chef, then I would just jump into it, right? And I've kind of never looked back since, right?
So how old were you when you when you got involved into being a chef?
I was 22 years old.
Yeah. And
almost,
where
yeah.
was that? What was that?
I started. Okay, so during university, I worked as essentially a kitchen hand, right? Washing dishes, kind of prepping vegetables, doing a little bit of service. So not too much formally trained, just being in the kitchen on the nights that I could work. But then when I started my apprenticeship, I worked at a French bistro called the Kirkton. It's not there anymore. And I think that was the kind of the tail end of kitchens where they used to have big teams, right? You know, I think I remember that there was like 12 chefs. There was 2 chefs per section, and I was the apprentice, so it was me plus a commis chef who's essentially like a qualified chef, and a chef de partie, so a slightly more senior chef, and we were running a section, right? And that's unheard of these days. Having you know,
So what year was that like?
This is, I want to say 2006, 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then in my head, I was fascinated with French cuisine because it was, you know, like in culinary training, it's the French way. So for me, it was just trying to learn, you know, what is essentially the fundamentals of, you know, what cooking is, right? And then from that, you know, I think this is back in the day where it wasn't, you know, like there's no YouTube. There wasn't even Google really, you know what I mean? So a lot of the kind of curious information you just have to absorb from like cookbooks. And, cookbooks. And I was used to reading cookbooks anyway. So kind of just diving into, you know, quite specific areas of information that you want to you seek. And back then it wasn't really kind of restaurant cookbooks yet, you know what I mean? So it was kind of at the start of it. So it was exciting time to be learning, you know, that kind of stuff, right? And I just kept trying to figure out how do I get better and better, and then identifying, you know, like any kind of young person would do, like I would go out and eat and drink at, you know, these restaurants that were, you know, you'd read the guides and you'd be like, okay, this is what they think is the best restaurant. You go and eat and drink there and you go, actually, this is pretty amazing experience, and try and get a job there, you know?
Right.
And then you just, obviously they'll tell you no a lot of times,
Of
and then
course.
you just try and get, you know, so I remember I got a job at a one hat restaurant, you know, and I worked there for a year and a half.
What was?
Which
this
restaurant
one?
was that? Yeah.
So that was called Galileo at the Observatory Hotel in Sydney. And the cuisine there was fascinating because it was Japanese French. So I already had a little bit of French background working at the French bistro. And then now I'm working for this Japanese chef. And he was very strict. He worked for, you know, he apprenticed through a system that was a kind of French fine dining in Japan. Worked for a guy called Joe Robuchon, who's, you know, essentially one of the greatest chefs in history. And I wanted to learn, you know, vicariously through Chef Haru how to cook in a Robuchon style, right? And, you know, I served my time with him, and then I had the opportunity.
Just quickly, you said you served your time with him and that he was really strict.
Yeah.
What's that kind of kitchen experience?
You know, I think it's very hierarchical. Back, you know, like, and once again, it was still quite a large team. You know, I think the team was still, 10 people. It was very fine dining. We all had to wear those tall French hats.
Yeah.
You know,
Really
like white
old school.
aprons, a lot of, you know, a lot of bowing,
Classic.
a lot of yes chef, a lot of, you know. But, you know, I learnt a lot, you know, a lot of, and it's that kind of Japanese precision, and then in that kind of ecosystem had its own kind of societal hierarchies. I was a young guy, inexperienced. So it was a lot of just, you know, earning respect and working through repetitive kind of detail-oriented tasks.
Doing the boring things.
But I think that's like there's a little bit like, yes, it is boring, but it's also like I feel like it builds a certain type of mental toughness, a certain type of repetition, you know, and I think that's essentially what it takes to create, you know, a craft. I think, you know, in your world, it will be like, you know, like editing videos is absolutely not the most glamorous part, right?
No,
you go back and forth, you're scrubbing millimeters just to find the, you know, the lighting levels and stuff, right? But then if you didn't have, say, you know, say 5,000 hours of doing that, right, you wouldn't know how to do it quickly. You know, and that's the same as like as cooking, you know. I think the training part is as important as the years that you get, you know, being established as well, because you don't get those back, right? You know, like it's you need almost like a hurt locker of where to go.
Yeah.
You know, when someone gives you 40 kilos of onions.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just like I
dig
peeled,
deep.
you know, I peeled
Yeah.
and cut 40 kilos of onions before.
Yeah.
And I,
Cried so much.
yeah, you do. And I still cry.
Yeah,
But
of course.
it's, you need to know that you can do it in 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead of going, oh, this is going to take me forever.
Mm.
Yeah.
I like
You know what I
this
mean?
mentality a lot. Yeah, like setting time limits and like I was actually talking to someone today about like teaching your craft to someone, and it's like you can't just like teach it in a week. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it's something that it's gonna take time. You know, you need to do the reps. You need to like do all these little things to be able to get to that like that better level
Mm.
of the craft.
Correct. And also, it's once you know those details, then you can delegate that away with, you know, confidently going,
Yes.
hey man, this is
Yes.
not the best use of my time.
Yeah.
Of course.
To be, you
I
know,
think also with these when you're trying to transfer creativity into a system and a process, you need to understand what each little bit is and turn it into a system. With what we've been doing recently, it's you know, for me it's like well, you just do it. You just do the thing. Like we're hiring people and we're trying to teach them how to do each individual part of our thing, and maybe it'll be marketing, but okay, what's actually within that? And then all the little extra bits, because I'll be teaching someone and I'll be like, why don't they just get it? But it's because I've been in there doing the reps over and over again. I've done
Many
it a
times.
million times.
Yeah.
And then it's about actually pulling that out. I'm sure that's the same with you when you're teaching people your menu. You know, you got to pull out that little bit that you understand is the difference between, I don't know, a certain thing tasting one way or the other, and then turning that into a process. That's why you have to really understand each element and what
Yeah.
you do.
correct. And I'm a firm believer that creativity can be taught, right?
Mm.
But it needs to come with a little bit of foundational work involved
Of
in
course.
that, right? You know, like, and the guys that make it look easy is they're just hiding the thousands of hours that they've done and be able to codify it in a very easy, like, hey, like, you know what I mean? I think like when I was younger, I used to look at, you know, documentaries of, you know, like director of photography come in and they just do a couple of these ones and they go, yeah, that's the shot, right? But like
So many
on
times.
surface level, we don't realize that this guy is, you know, like pick the right, you know, time of the day, the angle, all of that, just to be able to do it like that, right?
Like that,
and I
yeah.
feel that as you exercise the creativity and put more out in the world, you get more confidence to kind of understand, you know, like what's going to stick the landing and what's going to like just not be great. You know
Of
what I mean? And I
course,
think
yeah.
they're like, I've been very lucky, you know, with my career and the projects that I do, that I have a pretty strong kind of creative, you know, kind of look and feel of the stuff I do now, right? But that's not without saying that, you know, I don't get it, you know, I get it right all the time,
Of
right?
course.
But it's still, I still feel it's important that you still put the word out, right? Still put the work out, you know? So yeah, going back to your question is, I guess I've always been really curious about like why are these guys so good, and trying to learn from that, because I feel, you know, ultimately I'm lucky that my work is my job is quite creative, and I get to put that my version of what that is out there, you know. And I think like early days of Lee Ho Fook, you know, I had the opportunity of opening essentially what a modern Chinese restaurant looks like, you know, in the early 2010s. And, you know, I've been lucky to grow with this project to a point where we're looking at almost 12 years, you know. And a lot of it has grown with me, you know, as the person kind of dictating and changing what that product looks and feels like. And I think the work there has always been trying to move the needle a little bit in terms of understanding of Chinese cuisine within an Australian context. You obviously cooking delicious food, creating a nice hospitality experience, adding to the landscape of Melbourne, the Melbourne dining scene, and also to, be seen as, someone in the hospitality landscape of, Australia, being represented well around the world. I never think that I would be I don't ever think that I compete with, restaurants that are within the city. I look at trying to put a restaurant that I would be proud of, on a world stage.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Which changes the lens a little bit in terms of the kind of stuff that I do, I guess.
Yeah.
So what was the first restaurant you opened?
Yeah, Lee Ho Fook is the first restaurant.
It's
I
the
opened.
first
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, obviously, like, this is interesting because it's like your first restaurant and you still have it till this day.
Mm.
And I'm sure like the challenges you had at that time are definitely different than now. What was it like to open? Yeah, what was it like to open the restaurant, like your first restaurant, the challenges? Like, what was the biggest obstacles you faced? Was it scary? How did it all go?
Yeah, of course, it's all scary. I think even there's always a level of anxiety when you're operating your own business, right? I remember like the early days of Lee Ho Fook. It was very daunting because it was my first time being a head chef. It was my first time owning my own business. It was my first time, putting my style of food out. There was a lot of, you go through this, I guess, the same emotions as anyone, in that position. You feel like you're an imposter. You feel like you're not good enough.
Of course, yeah.
You're always second guessing a lot of your stuff, and then ultimately your work is also reviewed in real time. Every day by customers, by the media, by reviewers, by people you like, people you don't like, all of that kind of stuff, right? So it is very stressful,
Yeah.
right? To a lot of it's stressful for a lot of its parts, right? But I think also I was lucky enough to do the work that I wanted to do. I'm passionate about food. I'm passionate about being a chef. I love like being able to work in the kitchen every day and create dishes, and I think as time goes by, you gain more confidence, in the areas that you're good at, right? And then you just lean into that, and people come back to to Lee Ho Fook for the things that that are uniquely ours as well, So, and that helps in the confidence and the journey, I think.
Yeah. Was there like a moment where you felt like Lee Ho Fook went from like just a restaurant to like a well-known, established, successful restaurant? Was there like a moment that you felt like a shift in that, or?
Yeah, not really. Hey, like, I think even now, I don't think we're like super established or really well known. Like, I still feel that like that's the work that is constant. You know what I mean? It's constantly trying to get the brand more known,
Yeah.
in front of new people. But like, I feel that I've been really fortunate to be able to work with everyone that within the industry I kind of wanted to work with, and it's gotten to a point where, we're just excited to see who's new and who's up and coming and champion them a little bit. I think that's a nice kind of evolution with
I
where
like
we are
that.
as a restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I wanted to just quickly touch on couldn't help but think throughout this whole time that you've been speaking, from what you've been saying, what you've been describing with your whole attitude towards food and everything, it just sounds like someone that loves to be in the kitchen. Do you love to be in the kitchen?
Yeah, massively.
And where did that come from? Was the kitchen always a happy place for you kind of growing up? Were you always in there maybe with your mum or something like that? Or what was it?
No, I don't think there isn't like some kind of childhood link. I think, I like, it's just the style of work is, really appeals to me in a kitchen because like I love working with my hands. You know,
Mhm.
I like working in teams. You know, I think, and I love cooking. You know, I love like the craft and the little nuances of cooking. Like I like cutting stuff. I like cooking stuff. Like all of that stuff is exciting. I like the getting better every day kind of mentality, right? To a certain extent, I do like the repetition. Um, so these are all like I feel like these are all elements that I get in my work. You know what I mean? And the kind of annoying thing for me is as my career progresses, I'm doing less of the stuff I like to do. You know what I mean? Which is working with food and in kitchens, and more of the kind of more grown up stuff, which is, you know, managing the teams
Business.
and yeah, and trying to load balance each kind of business um and do all the slightly more boring and mundane tasks that, you know, kind of come with it, right?
I guess that's where your point of difference, and I know we spoke about it earlier, but you know you're talking about marketing the restaurant and trying to bring it to more people. But I think the reason why it is the way that it is and that it is well known and is such a fantastic place is because the place that you came from, I think when you opened it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a place of pure passion and wanting to put up an incredible product. And I guess the question in this is, you know, how do you manage that creative process with food, and how do you evolve your menus and turn it into what it is, that kind of finished product? What's your process like?
I think it comes that yeah, like I guess it's always a constant, you know, pipeline of how like new dishes come onto the menu, right? I guess, you know, there's one kind of avenue where it's these are ideas that didn't work before, and we you know, we can't let go of them and we want to put them out again, and we've realized either it's like bad timing, or like the team isn't skilled enough, or like we just don't, we as in like me, my head chefs, and the guys kind of leading the the menu change might not know how to quite get there yet. But then we'll go on a trip or we'll go traveling, and then we see something and we're like, oh, I saw how they did this, and that could be a missing piece, and that kind of unlocks it moving forward. Or it could be, oh, hey, there's this really traditional dish that we don't think the dining audience quite gets yet. How do we meet them halfway?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that we can still like put that message out or introduce that, you know what I mean, that style of food. And then like in that process, we come up with something that is uniquely ours, right?
So you're talking when you say we, you, and like your team at each of your venues, or right? Just
Yes.
like the other chefs in.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like for example, like, you know, I love boiled food, right? But
Mhm.
then the customer's not going to pay for boiled food, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but we all like all ethnics grew up eating boiled food, right? Like
Boiling,
it's
yeah.
all like something's braised, and it's like, it's, you know, there was a time where ugly delicious was a thing, but then it's still essentially no one's going to pay $50 for like boiled beef brisket. But then it's about how do we get it so it still has the essence of the dish, right? But then there's perceived value for the customer, and it still falls within like the Lee Ho Fook creative umbrella. You know what I mean? So we try and muck around with it, but then it's we don't want to send it so far away that it's like so esoteric and strange.
It's not true to the brand.
Yeah, correct. Or just not true to the dish. You know what I mean? Like, and or so we're always mucking it. Like, we're always trying to find the middle grounds on how to make it work. And also, like, you know, restaurant cooking is completely different to cooking at home. You know, like cooking at home is just you have to cook the dish once,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like cooking at a restaurant, it's like okay, you can fry an egg. Everyone can fry an egg, right? Restaurant
Well.
cooking's like fry 60 eggs in like 35 minutes.
Yeah.
But then the numbers change every 2 seconds, right? So it's like fry 2 eggs, fry 5 eggs, fry 3, but one of them has to be like, you
Yeah.
know, well done, one of them not, and then they all got to go out and they all got to be nice. So that's the restaurant. So it's like sometimes we get great inspiration from this dish, but then we put it through the restaurant system and we go, yeah, it might not work, right? But then that gets put in the back burner, and then a few years later we bump into another idea and we go, oh, actually we've just unlocked that.
Yeah, right.
So it's like a constant, you know, I guess board, like inspiration board of like this dish is half cooked, this dish is still very, very like nowhere near ready, and this dish is like we just can't wait until this ingredient's in season.
And
You
can
know what I
bring it
mean? So
back.
it's correct.
Yeah. Do you have any? Do you have any influences outside of, I guess, food that influence the menu and or just the Lee Ho Fook brand as a whole? That's not other restaurants or things like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, are you drawing inspiration from society, culture, pop culture,
Yeah,
the zeitgeist?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think art, like I think art and nature are two huge. Like it sounds really wanky. I remember when I was a young chef and I had a
Food can get so wanky.
yeah, but it's also I remember like one of my chefs telling me that like if you want to make beautiful food, you have to stare at a garden, right? And I never got that until like kind of when I was kind of making my own dishes, right? Because it's about composition, it's about textures, nature, and they're all everything's linked, right? So I draw a lot of inspiration from obviously different cultures. Like I'm a huge believer that we're all more similar than we are different. You know what I mean? Like, and
I agree.
I love trying to piece that together.
I think especially when you're talking about cultures that have a strong food identity, there are so many parallels that can be drawn across so many different dishes, like noodles, pasta, obviously that's like a really obvious one, but there's so many little things that you'll see. It's like maybe like a parcel, like a ravioli will be similar to a dumpling, and each kind of culture has its own take on something that is essentially the same, just with different flavors and obviously
but it's
inspiration and things like
like
that.
I go even like closer. Say for example, okay, lamb, cumin, and sumac is like Middle Eastern, right? But then you go lamb, cumin, oregano, and then we're Mexican, right? Like lamb, cumin, Szechuan peppercorns, and then we're China, right? And it's like just one out of the three is different. And then like if I go like lime and coriander, like you're either thinking Mexican food or Vietnamese food. You know what I mean? Like, and
I love that.
That exactly right. And like, and I'm obsessed with that little, and
The nuance.
and it's all that everything's in the world. I find is like travels in the laterals.
Yeah.
Because sun comes up, sun goes down, so it's east to west.
And I
right?
mean, like, if you think of it, like produce is pretty much worldwide. Like every single country they have, you know what I mean? A lot of them are similar with the produce, you know what I mean? The way they cook, it's just a different
correct
recipe, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, different ratios, honestly, right? Like it's like, and if you link that to art and architecture, you know what I mean? Like you can really see, and that's where I feel the inspiration. Like I see it like in a slightly different lens like that, and that's how I like to create a little bit, when it comes to food,
At the start of the conversation, you mentioned that you were like grew up in a migrant family. So where are you from originally, and like when did you come to Australia? How old were you?
Yeah, I'm also really keen to hear about what it was like growing up Asian, I guess, in Sydney, and then that you've obviously got a drive to be very good at what you do, and were you like that in high school and everything as well as you were growing up, or?
Well, so my parents are Malaysian Chinese. I was born in a tiny country called Brunei, which is kind of in Southeast Asia. We migrated to Australia, to Sydney in 1991. I was 6 years old. My dad's an engineer. My mom's a stay-at-home mom. I mentioned that before. We grew up in kind of the inner west of Sydney, so Burwood. I don't know if you know Sydney that well. And, back then it was a lot of new migrants, right? So there's a lot of Lebanese people because the Civil War
Of course.
was coming back around that time. A lot of Sri Lankans, once again, Civil War. Koreans. I don't know why they came, but no conflict.
There must be a reason.
No conflict at the time. But
Just thought
so
Australia
in
would be
that,
a good place.
I grew up in Burwood and then Homebush and kind of in the west. And it's all it's all classic migrant story. I think you can probably cut and paste my story to your story.
Yeah.
It was great. We Malaysia my parents grew up in Malaysia, so Malaysia is a very exciting part of Asia. You get Chinese food, Indian food, Malay food, and it's kind of variants all between. So delicious. Everything is, you know, vibrant, delicious. And then obviously, from growing up within that community, there was a lot of Lebanese food, there was a lot of Sri Lankan food, there was a lot of Korean food in the mix. So it was, yeah, it's just delicious. It was delicious and very. And when you're a kid, you're curious, right? Because you know your mates from school, they're eating this, you hang out at their place, and you know it all just gets added to the mix of all the
Of
things that you're
course.
into. So
Yeah. Is there a cuisine that you like would like to explore more around, like that you haven't tapped into yet?
I guess, well, professionally, I like playing in the kind of Asia, the cuisines of Asia, right? Like I'm fascinated about the food of the Middle East, hilariously, right? Like I love, like from what I see on the internet, I love Turkish food. I like the nuances of that. I think there's a lot of like the whole region is exciting. I think you know what I
Couldn't agree
mean.
more.
And severely underrepresented. I think you know. I think it's but you it's like anything like as the world kind of grows, like you know the it also feels like it shrinks a bit. You know what I mean? Like for example, like Chinese food when I was growing up was all Cantonese food, right? It was all sweet and sour pork, roast duck, stuff, you know, fried rice. But now you can have very niche regions of Chinese food, right? All the way from like north, south, central, you know, lots of and like even Cantonese food as a region has like split up into, you know, like Fujian cuisine, Chaozhou cuisine, you know, Guangzhou cuisine, which is they're 45-minute drive from each other. You know what I
It's
mean?
different, yeah.
And I think that's going to eventually happen to a lot of different cuisines. You know what I mean? And I can kind of see that with Middle Eastern food, right? Like everyone understands. Like there's Israeli cuisine, there's Palestinian cuisine, there's you know Egyptian. So when you say falafels, you know what I mean? Like is it, you know?
It could mean
Yeah, it
anything.
could be any. Like,
Yeah.
who's falafel? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Lebanese food, like
I will
is it-
say Lebanese. but-
yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, yeah. but that's makes it, you know, like
Yeah.
it's identifiably
Of
stylishly
course.
different, right?
Mm.
But then if it was 10 years ago, it's just falafels, you know.
Mm.
And I'm excited to see that because then it just like when you can categorize stuff a little bit more detailed, I feel that these subcultures become seen,
Yeah.
and then you know what I mean, like the work and the history gets acknowledged a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that has to be, you know, it's a supply and demand kind of a thing, especially with Chinese food in Australia. I think there's a big demand for it, so it's going to obviously flourish, and there can be so many different types of Chinese cuisine, and you can be pretty sure that each of them will probably be well received because we like Chinese food. And then so I think, yeah, it just needs to be built on cuisines that people are interested in. Middle Eastern cuisine, I think, definitely on the rise. Love to eat it, but yeah, I guess that's what you need from each of those cuisines to really have them grow into something that's more detailed and more expansive than the rest.
Yeah, but I think it's also like it's young people like us that are just a little bit more interested. You know what I mean? Because it's just the exposure's there. So, and then if ultimately like if it's good and there's a you know there's the populations to sustain it, then like you know have its moments, great, right? Like, and I think that's important for you know kind of preserving that culture and moving it forward a little bit, right? Because sometimes at the start it's like, oh, everyone wants the most authentic or the traditional, but then to expand it and for it to you know to move forward, you need to take on slightly newer you know influences and
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
kind of like imagine if film was stuck in you know the black and white
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like we wouldn't be
You
able
lose
to
interest.
yeah, and
Yeah.
also just you don't know what's on the other side of the door. You know, it could be even more and even better. So,
It's exciting.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like
It's
I'm
very
all
exciting.
for just you know stretching it and seeing how far you can push it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting because, like, if you go to, like, the Middle East, he was talking about supply demand, and you know what I mean? You go to the Middle East, you don't find that many, like, Asian cuisine places, even, like, the traditional, like, banh mi, and do you know what I mean? And, like, I personally like it does exist, but not a lot. I personally only like started to dig in when I first came here, and yeah, I
Into
loved
Asian
it.
cuisine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Asian cuisine. Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
mm, mm.
yeah.
Mm.
So we actually just saw like you were featured on Broadsheet, Bossa Nova, like in the
Yes.
adventure. Can
Yeah,
you
this
tell us
sounds
a little
crazy.
bit
What is
about that,
this?
please?
Yeah. So, I had the opportunity to work on a kind of side project, like, and it was funny because so Con Christopoulos, my partner in that business, he's a pretty well known Melbourne restaurateur. He's got City Wine Shop, the European, Kirk's. He's very kind of Eurocentric in his hospitality style, and we were talking during COVID about what's the new kind of hospitality scene look like, and what's going to create a sustainable business in the kind of current era climate, and a lot of it is just trying to balance the the staffing costs, right? So we had this idea of trying to see if we can put like a sushi train out into the dining scene, and that kind of addresses the staffing aspect of it, because essentially as soon as you sit, you just start taking food off the train.
Wow,
Right?
that's cool.
And we were like, okay, so how do we, like, we didn't really want to reimagine the sushi train, but we just wanted to see if we could put something that was with the kind of the brand pillar of quality and just accessibility. They're the two things that we really want to kind of dial in on. And also Japanese cuisine, I've kind of worked with it a little bit in my past, and I wanted to see if, there was any kind of creativity or excitement that we could do, but in an accessible
And
setting.
how did
So-
that go?
Sorry?
How did that go? Like coming back to Japanese, like how did you enjoy it? How
Yeah, it
was
was
it
awesome.
like? Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I
Yeah.
think that's a funny thing, because sometimes it's like, you work in a certain cuisine style, and then once your time is done there, it's like you have all these ideas and recipes, and one wants to kind of push it further, but then because it's, you've kind of finished that chapter and you moved on to another one, it doesn't quite get to you don't live the potential of it, right?
Yeah, I do agree with you. Also, like Rick Rubin once said that I read in his book, sometimes you like start something and you learn something from it and you leave it for a while, but then when you come back to it, you will find yourself have a lot of knowledge about it, but you've changed and your perspective changed, and you could also create magic, like after a long break, kind of.
Yeah, perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect analogy, and that's
Yeah.
exactly it. It's like, it's like having, like, I love these recipes when I kind of worked with them, and then being able to come back to them, like, then we're talking years later, right? And to have the understanding of, like, even just looking at some of these and going, I would change, say the soy ratio a little bit, or I would dial down the mirin, or I would go harder on some, you know what I mean? Like, just naturally looking at it going, look, I already understand that the flavor profile that I want to achieve is like here. And if I was to look at that recipe 10 years ago, I would still just use it like for like,
Of
and not be
course.
able to tweak it as as
With your personal flavor profile?
yeah,
Is that
like,
what it
yes,
is?
but
Yeah.
also like you just like I some of the recipes I look at it and I go, yeah, I remember this recipe being kind of too soy dominant, and that is what I didn't like about it. Or, like, this one is too sweet because we're cooking for a customer in 2008 at the time.
But-
You know what I mean? This is 2024.
But
you
you
know?
also didn't probably have the same authority
Correct.
to create. So I find that really exciting. Like, because now, like, I have my own business, Heart Media, and you know what I mean? Like, back in the days when I was working for other people, I'll be like struggling to create freely without any like briefs, you know what I mean? Right
Yes.
now, I could literally do whatever I want, and it
Yes.
actually feels really good. It's one
Correct.
of my favorite part
Yeah.
of being like a business owner, or do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Perfectly put. And that's exactly, like, I'm lucky that I get to work in this level of freedom, but also kind of already coming in with like the presets already kind of dialed in for
Of
me. You know what I
course,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have to sit there and like,
Yeah.
you know, like check. You know what I mean? Like,
Of course.
it's a little bit of bonus. So it's almost like a head start on starting from scratch, right?
I like the priest. Do you do like any sort of photography or anything like that?
No,
'Cause
not really.
You
Well,
have been like,
No,
you
because-
have been throwing some like technical visual words.
Well, I was just joking with
Talking about
Tyrone.
color and
Yeah.
scrolling before.
Yeah, because I was joking with Tyrone because I've managed the social media for Lee Ho Fook since day one, right?
Yeah,
and
does it.
that's massive.
He
That's
does, and it's so funny
That's
because
really good.
and like the biggest challenge is we all know that reels are what's going to get your eyeballs on the
Of course.
on the algo, right?
Yeah.
and meant shooting video,
Oh.
and I'd like because when it was just posts, like I'd outsourced the photography, and I'd love working with a photographer to create the look, like the kind of look of the brand, and I'm very proud of what we've achieved with that. But now it's kind of like I remember when you used to put like get these amazing photos done, post them, and then get like 35 likes, and you're like, what's going on?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like how does that work? I've got more than 10,000 followers. Like this should the conversion is really poor.
Algorithms.
Yeah, correct. But then once you start doing reels, and then you're like, okay, so the machine wants you to do these, right? And so, yeah.
So you make
I think
your reels
also-
now.
Yeah. So I've been mucking around doing it. So
Wow.
me and my wife, right? So she's on the camera. And then, so I was just joking that we got camera B. So I got
Another iPhone.
and I showed him it's basically another iPhone
Oh
with
my
one of
God.
those twisty tripods that we put on a wine bottle.
Okay, cool. See, now it's really interesting because I feel like that's what we do, but I feel like honestly some of the best like moments to capture sometimes are like those moments that you only witness, like you know what
Yes.
I mean? And the ideas also comes in those like random moments. Like if you sit down and try to brainstorm everything, sometimes it's harder to get that really
Yeah.
good ideas, if
And
you know what I mean.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and I think we're probably at that. Like, and it's not like I've shot that many videos, but like, it used to be like, okay, we'll do these videos where it's just around the restaurant and just put text over the top just to do promos on stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I really wanted to do plate up ones, so we did a series of plate up ones, and then I was obsessed with the intro scene, so I was like, I really want an intro scene.
Using the iPhone.
The phone.
Yeah, it's all on iPhone.
Lighting?
Yeah.
No lighting?
Yeah, a little bit of lighting. Just
Okay.
one like handheld,
The little light.
yeah,
Cool.
little light thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we started seeing, because once you're on that, like, here's the cool thing about creativity, right? And this applies for food as well.
Yeah.
Like once you dive, like when something's in your lens, you start looking, like you start picking all
You
this
see it
other stuff.
everywhere.
Yeah, you see it everywhere,
Yeah.
or you start like you pick even more details out of everything, right? So once we started filming our own kind of reels, we started looking at production value, and we're like, oh man, it'd be cool if we get the camera cut in from here. And then you start like write these notes down, and then you're essentially a director, right? You're like, okay, shot one, it's a
go.
panning shot.
Yeah.
Shot two,
What can't this
busy.
guy do?
Yeah,
We
but
should
like,
probably-
but no, that's
we
cool though,
We'll
because
be probably showing some of those videos.
yeah,
now.
I'd love to,
Okay.
man. But then that's what we like. Because when you're excited about it, you want to learn
Of
it,
course.
and then you're immersed in it, and then that's why the opportunity is still that we can shoot them. Like that's why once we got the camera B, I was like, oh, we can cut between A and B, and it was awesome.
Love
Yeah.
that, man.
Yeah.
Really.
But then that applies with food as well, because
Yeah.
sometimes it'd be like, oh, hey, man, we saw this thing of this Turkish guy like grilling lamb like this. It'd be cool if we did that with like duck.
Mm-hmm.
Or what do you think that will do? And he'd be like, oh, we should stuff it. Remember that stuffing we used to do with that dumpling that didn't work? So it just becomes like this whole thing of like a creative process. And at the end of the day, we get to put it out and someone eats it and we go like, is it art or garbage, right?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Creativity is just, I think, your interpretation of other art that you've kind
Correct.
of ingested and then kind of spat
Yeah,
out
yeah.
through your lens. That's what it is each time. And your partner, you do this with your partner? She
Yes.
has any experience with creative things like this? Or
Oh yeah, like I think, I think shooting content is if if you got Instagram, you've got some kind of experience shooting
Yeah.
content,
Yeah.
right? Like
Of
she
course.
can take a better selfie than I can. Like guys can't take selfies. I would think we need lessons. But
That's
it's
funny.
just I think it's we all learning. Like no one's an expert, or there's no social media manager for 5 years or anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Do you feel like, actually, the question is like, do you have any like tips to like other restaurant owners regarding like, or like even in general, like just about marketing, branding? Like, how did you like, how did it all happen to you? Like, you do have a good brand, like I know you do it yourself, but was it something you thought about all the time, or was it something that just comes naturally? Especially like as a chef, I feel like a chef is a brand.
yes.
Do you know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of it, like you see like big chefs,
Mm,
you know the chef sometimes more than the actual restaurant.
yes.
Do you know what I mean? So was it something that just like comes natural, or was it something that you read books about? You know what I mean? How did
Yeah.
it happen?
I think look, it's it's very complex, right? Like I feel like you got to do honestly all of it to a certain degree, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's you know a big part of it was like before Lee Ho Fook, I wasn't really known in Melbourne, right? So I was lucky to use the opening and the journey of Lee Ho Fook to be concurrent with promoting Victor Liong, the chef, right?
Oh, okay.
And then from that is, you got to, I feel like you got to be seen living it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it's, people kind of buy into it a little bit more if you're out supporting other restaurants, you're attending events, all of that, right? But then also, like I wasn't shy of the work. Like I'm always working. I'm always cooking. I'm always, being involved and trying to deliver projects and cook events and do dinners and also at the restaurants, and developing that, I guess. And then from that is, it helps if you have a pretty clear idea of what your style is and what your food looks like, or whatever you're putting out there, really, right? Like be it an author, an actor, an artist. I feel like like you guys have a very strong look and feel about all your content out there. I can
Thank you.
you can, and that's I think that's important, right? Obviously, if I was after that look and feel, I would engage you guys, you know what I mean? And vice versa, there's other studios out there that do a slightly different aesthetic and a slightly different kind of storytelling angle, and I think they're all important, you know what I mean? Like it's like the way it's yeah, yes, I've read books about it, yes, I listened to podcasts about it, but like there's no real, oh, this is the guide.
And
There's not one answer. Like, and that's the funny thing about like the complexity of working in this modern day, because there's one element where your work exists in the real world, right? Someone paying money will want to see what you do, right?
I
And
agree
then
with you.
another layer is a lot of your work exists in the online world, right? Which is got more eyeballs but no actual conversions or no interactions,
Yeah.
right? And that's associated with what your brand is, right? And then there's you doing this with real people like me, and what's the signaling there, you know what I mean? So everything is, it's all from like the way you message your clients to the way you're messaging your potential customers, you know what I mean? Like every little layer of it is like, if you picked say camera and audio where that was all orange all the time,
Yeah.
that's uniquely
Mm.
a weird
your brand.
marketing.
Yeah.
That's a weird marketing
Yeah.
signal, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and there's guys out there that do that, right? You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah.
And but then you choose not to, right? And why? Doesn't matter. You could be like, dude, this is the cheapest thing I can afford, or it could be like, no, I like all black, right? And they're all of these kind of help tilt the needle towards what
Your personal
you are
brand.
and
Yeah.
what you're not.
I think
as well,
also
right?
with like talking about reading books or listening to podcasts and everything, I think what all those books and all those podcasts and all these people that are trying to teach you what branding is and creativity, and we definitely feel this with our personal brand, is they're trying to bring you to kind of be within yourself and learn what makes you unique, and then that creates your brand, because the thing that creates your brand is you. And
Yeah,
what makes
correct.
you
Yeah.
unique.
Yes.
Without that, you've got nothing. And we've seen it obviously with our agency too, and you know, we're really happy obviously that you've said that you feel that our content and our style is unique to us, because we've spent a lot of time cultivating that and trying to put that out there, and that creates a point of difference. And you, for our business, once we started focusing more on our personal brand, we saw
Shifted.
incredible
Yeah.
gains. You know, we double the
course.
business, and then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
focus on it some more, and we see more improvements, and it becomes this thing, because people want to resonate with something that's
It's a culture.
specific and unique.
Yeah.
They want to create like the feeling of what it is to
Yeah.
be your brand, and when you hit that on the head, that's what
Yeah.
you really
Yeah, it's a culture
can
thing.
create some
Right? It's like
success.
somehow signaling through your work, the way you are, the way you talk, the way you look. Like it's like people like us do things like this, the culture. You know what I mean? Like and sometimes it's not for you, or
Of
it's
course.
like in this area of my life, it isn't that. You know what I mean? Like, and they're all. Subtly people pick that up, right? Like it's, you can tell, like, why do you like the movies you like, and it's because XXX, or-
feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, or the artists that you like, the furniture that you like, right? And then sometimes, and that's how your friends identify with you, or your community identifies with you, because they'll see something and they'll be like, oh, Tyrone would love this. And why would I think that? Well,
course.
because everything about you is telling me you'd like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then, I'm not going to pick a bright orange fluffy duck and go, I mean, I think you'll love this. Like, nothing about, our
About what you
interaction
know
is
about
telling
me.
yeah. that I know about you,
Yeah.
right, on this level is going to tell me you
Yeah.
like this, you know what I mean? Does that make
Sidebar,
sense?
I would love that. Bright orange fluffy duck. If you want to drop it off at any time, right? Our office is just here in Fitzroy.
Yeah.
Do you try to like plan too much the future, or are you more of like, I'm just gonna explore and wing it?
Look, I think, I have some goals that I want to achieve. I think I try not to plan too much. I think I feel my strengths are in the details and the working on the things that are in front of me, with the well, the way sometimes it's oddly not organized, sometimes it's ridiculously too meticulous, like but I try not to go, oh, hey, I want to have, say, 15 restaurants in 5 years. I never think like that. I just go, look, if we get an opportunity to work on projects that are exciting, that I think are creative, or something that I've always wanted to work on, then, we kind of just keep pushing that conversation.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know where any of this will take me. I'm just lucky that I'm still here doing it,
I love that.
Just doing-
Was
sorry.
there like was there like a goal or a moment that you thought, if I get there, I will
I've
be
made it.
happy, I will be content, and when you got there, was it really what you thought it is?
Yeah.
And how was your experience with this whole like?
Yeah, funny.
Yeah.
There's been a few actually, and like I think, like on a personal level, like as a chef, I chose a career trajectory of business ownership was my ultimate goal, right? And then when I got there, I was like, oh, dude, this is not even the end. You know what I mean? This is like the beginning, and it's
You're
a
telling
horrible,
us,
it's
yeah.
a horrible prize. You know what I mean?
Crazy,
Like,
yeah.
it's because it's I gotta keep working on it,
Keep
and
going, yeah.
like I've just bought myself a prison sentence. This is great, right? But then, like personally, as a chef, also being able to travel the world, because I gave up the possibility of world travel just on focusing on trying to get my craft to a point that I could open my own business, right? So any opportunity I get to travel for work, I love, and I
That's the
think
best.
I think it's a huge like achievement, right, to be able to do that through what basically, like, I gave up traveling the world because I wanted to focus and work so hard to get the skills to be able to have my own business, which is Lee Ho Fook.
Yeah.
And then for Lee Ho Fook to turn around and give me the reward of taking it around the world, it's amazing.
It's
right?
incredible.
Because it's just
Yeah.
it goes to show that you didn't give anything up here, Vic. It's
Mm.
like what this restaurant has given you is, and I've been lucky to take it to like New York, to London, to
I love
Paris.
that.
That's amazing, right?
Mm.
And that I think that those goals were hugely rewarding because, like I get to cook the food that I love doing
And travel.
and
Yeah.
and tell the story on the other side of the world, right?
Of course, yeah.
I think
With your,
yeah, like sorry,
you go.
like yeah, like the amount of gratitude we always feel when we like go away for a work trip is honestly, it's like the best time ever.
Yes.
The
Doesn't feel like
best.
work.
Yeah,
You know what I
no,
mean?
no. You
Doesn't
just
feel like work.
you just feel so grateful, like that you're doing what you're doing, and like especially like there is a lot of people that actually do hate their job and not happy with their job, and yeah, it just gives you a good perspective.
Mm.
Yeah.
With your partner, so you've spoken, you said you work a lot and you travel a lot too. How do you go navigating that with your relationship?
Yeah, dude.
Because you're married to the restaurant, right?
Yeah, no. So yeah, my wife, she'll be listening to this, Bridget. I've been very lucky, right? But I also understand that I can't keep doing that, right? Like, because I want to have kids and start a family and be a good husband and be around,
Of
right?
course.
So I think that's the other thing about creativity and work like that we do, because there's one reality where you can go forever working, or forever putting your ideas out and working.
There's
working,
always
working.
work to do.
There's always work to
if
do.
we wanted to stay at
Right.
the office 24 hours a
Correct.
day, 7 days a
Correct.
week, we could do it, no
Correct.
problem.
Correct.
You can do it.
And that's the thing. It's like, but then where does it stop? Like, because if you're working, you give up is life and time and all the other things, right, that are important. So
In its essence, it's time.
correct.
Time
Time,
is the
yeah.
most expensive thing that you own as
Correct.
a person.
But
Yeah.
you'll get that. Like, you guys are very early in this journey. Like, you'll hit a point where, like, honestly, editing videos is going to do your head in, and you go, man, I would rather be spending time with my children, and if I can offload that to someone else, or actually the company's function, it's going to change. You know what I mean? And I think
I agree. Yeah.
they're all things where like I'm happy to do the work in this intensity and this level of sacrifice and commitment for now.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's gonna hit a day when I can't, man. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that day's gonna come soon, I feel,
Of
for me
course.
anyway, that I need to give up the thing that I like and I love the most, right, for what's important.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be, I think, a little bit painful.
It's all
for
about
me.
balance.
Yes, correct. But then also, like, I joked earlier going, I've lived a good life so
Yeah.
far. But I've also, I've been lucky to be able to work a good life as well. You know what I mean? So
You get to do so many different things.
correct.
Yeah.
You've had
I
so many
feel-
experiences.
Yeah, I feel like speaking of like us at this age, like working so hard, it's so true, and we feel it a lot of the time. We'll be like, man, we're just doing so much. With a lot of the time, not like it's not so rewarding, like financially, or do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? But we know deep down that what we're building is not just about the money right now. It's about what it's gonna give us in the future. But you do lose some sight sometimes, and you get angry. And I think just like reminding yourself
Yeah.
about these things is really important. And I also think like back in the days, it used to be harder to think that you could actually build your own business and like retire earlier than but
Yeah.
at this age, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I really do believe there are so much opportunities to create with what you like and make a living out of it, and actually really like retire. But you don't even think of retirement because you like what you're doing in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, correct.
You
correct.
love the work.
And that's exactly it. I think, like, when I was your age, I couldn't wait to retire, right? But then now it's like, I feel like my ideal, like, as if I don't really want to stop working, because I like being part of, the industry. I like doing projects that are different every time, and each time they address something that the previous one couldn't. You know what I mean? Like, and the hard part is it's that, right? Because otherwise you're you're not learning, you're not moving, you know. You guys are very early on this journey that like it's awesome. You should work intensely. You should work with as many different projects and try and get a huge amount of exposure just for yourself to
Yeah.
improve, but also just to see what's out there. And you know you'll create some stuff that you'll be so happy with sometimes with like no budget, and then sometimes you'll have huge budgets and go, oh my god, I hated that so much, but we just needed the money, right?
So
Like,
true.
but it's like,
All
and
the
you
time.
need to go through that journey to really kind of enjoy it a little bit too, right? And to know what your kind of limitations and what you kind of like about it, you know?
I think also like touch wood, we're blessed and you're blessed as well in a sense that what you've been doing so far has been working, and now you can kind of reinsert yourself into different projects in a different capacity, which might suit your current lifestyle more. You know what I mean? Like maybe you don't want to be slugging it out in the kitchen 7 days, and I highly doubt that you are anymore. But maybe there's projects that you might want to take on that are more creative, and they're still quite time demanding, but it's something that brings you joy and brings you pleasure and stimulates you in the way that you want to be, and you can position yourself in that way. And I guess you're just lucky to do that, and we're moving to a place now as well that we're lucky to be doing that a little bit more too. And I think the longer and longer that you go, the more you can be picky with the things that you do, and you can create that kind of lifestyle, I guess, that's more suited to you at each different point. And I think that's also the beauty of, you know, doing your own thing and having your own business too.
And building a team. And I really just remembered, like, I really like that how you, when you dine at Lee Ho Fook, you look, and on the back of the menu you can see the team, and I honestly never saw that before, and I really appreciated that. Just wanted to point it out.
No, because like I always see it as, you know, at the start it's always, hey, chef, you know, chef restaurant, it's all about this guy, but it's not, right? Like, and I think, you know, I'm at that stage of my career where I like working in different environments just to learn how other people manage their teams. You know, like, for example, how does the GM of the hotel in Singapore, how does he manage his team? And I learn a lot from that interaction, and I bring that learnings back to things like Lee Ho Fook, you know, and all the other projects that I'm involved in, you know. And I think it hits a point where, you know, like the first 8 years of running Lee Ho Fook, it was very much just me in there, small team every day, you know, same thing, in and out, right? But then it hits a ceiling on like, there's nothing new here for me to learn except for how to try and navigate the next period, right?
Yeah.
And that's in a cycle of, you know, what's the menu changing like? What's the wine list changing like? What's the, you know, business forecasting like? And you fall into a bit of a pattern, right? So I've been lucky that, you know, through our kind of expansion, that it's put me in different rooms working with different teams and forcing me to work in different capacities, right? Like, for example, my team in Singapore, I'm very well supported there. I have a whole, like, every venue has a full team from chef de cuisine all the way to kitchen porter. I report to, you know, a food and beverage director, and I work next to the general manager. And that is still a very creative process when it comes to me doing the food to the teams. But like, it's almost reductive for me to go in there and try and like prep something. So my input there needs to be so detailed that, you know, I can go in there and go, hey guys, if you can get all these things ready, I'll show you what I, you know, kind of imagine the thing to be. Do you know what I mean? Or all to a point where it's like, hey, this is the menu and here are all the recipes. I trust you guys to be able to like just give me the dishes, and I go, yep, like more this, less that, you know, cook that a bit more. I think portions a bit weird or plates wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then there's other projects, like say Lee Ho Fook, for example. It's still very much, hey Vic, like we ordered all the stuff. Can you go through the, you know, whatever the thing that you want to put on the menu next is, or so I actually make it, and then I work backwards from it. Like, going, actually, yeah, I think I put too much yogurt in this one this time or whatever, and the guys adjust it, kind of ongoing. So it just depends how intense you work in these things. And um, I'm just lucky at this stage that I get to interact in different kind of, um, scales, I guess, right?
Yeah.
What made you choose Singapore?
Well, that one. So my partnership with the Artisan Hotel there was interesting because it was, so they're a hotel group that is majority in China and Macau, and it's their first property outside of China, and they wanted to work with a chef consultancy essentially, but they wanted to champion what new Asian hospitality looks like, but in a global setting, right? And to bring a brand that they came up with called Cunino, and they really wanted to showcase
So
contemporary
they
Asian.
reached out wanting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for me, it was exciting because I wanted to do a hotel, right?
Amazing.
Because,
Yeah.
and that's been a pretty good partnership. So
You spoke to me briefly before about hotels being the black belt for chefs.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to just talk about that again for the
Yeah.
for the listeners, so
Well-
we can understand your mentality behind wanting to, get a
yeah.
work with the hotel.
Well, because I've always thought that the hotels are like the black belt of hospitality, because you're creating something, you're creating a building that someone lives in and operates in and experiences in every hour of the day, right? So, if you open a cafe, essentially it's, very, very straightforward business, right? You come in, you buy a coffee, you can stay, have it, leave. But a hotel is like, okay, there's a cafe, that's one function. There's rooms, right? How do people move within the rooms, right? There's obviously different restaurants within that space, right? Like, and you've got to almost be working with your kind of professional face, subtly championing the brand that they're in the whole time, right? So it's the whole building's
Massive
branded, right?
organization, yeah.
Everything,
Yeah.
like the toilet paper you choose, the pillow
Yeah.
cover you're in, what it smells like, the soap, all of this is like determined by what that
it's so many
hospitality
different
brand
kind of
is,
sensory
right?
experiences,
Yeah, correct,
bringing it all
correct.
together into one.
And like if you check into a hotel and you're there for 7 days on Monday, and someone upset you, one of the servers upset you at breakfast,
Mm-hmm.
you're not leaving until Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
You got to go back to this place you hate
Yeah.
for 7 days,
Yeah.
right? So it's their job to try and convert you from,
A
like
hater.
a -1 customer to a champion by the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And they have every opportunity to, and
it
I think
is
that's
possible.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Correct.
Some
Correct.
people are stubborn and they won't change their
Yeah,
mind.
but it's also like
Yeah.
it's at the end of the day, it's like it's hard work because
It
you have to
is.
go. Oh, I hope you enjoyed your, the next experience, the next
Yeah.
experience at
Yeah.
every stage, right?
And you've got, I know you're opening a cafe soon.
Yes.
I think I spoke to you about recently, Silk and Spoon.
Yeah, Silk Spoon.
Silk Spoon?
Yeah. So Silk Spoon is we're dabbling in the QSR space, which is a quick service restaurant model. That's essentially a cafe. So the core of the business is a cafe, but we want to dive into the concept of grab and go, so ready to eat.
Grab and go only?
No,
We're
so,
gonna
it's
do a la carte?
so yeah, there's going to be grab and go, and then there'll be in-venue dining, and then drinks and snacks, and food retail. I really want to dive into.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're going to be
so-
coming up with the food retail products yourself? Or
Yeah,
you're going to be
so
selling other people's?
ideally, I want to
Yeah, right.
do some stuff myself, right?
Mm.
Because we dabbled in this during COVID for Lee Ho Fook in terms of like sauces and dressings and seasonings
true.
and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've always wanted to do food manufacturing.
Yeah.
For some weird reason. I think packaging is a very important part of marketing and what it looks and feels like.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like
Yeah.
you're really into the aesthetic.
I love
of
I love that
things.
kind of stuff,
Yeah,
man. Like,
yeah.
like world building, right? Like it goes back
Yeah.
to
Brands.
Yeah,
You're
branding.
into brands.
Yeah, brands.
Yeah.
World building. What
It's
does that
fantastic.
tell people? What does that feel like when you're there? So, yeah.
So you got a lot going on right now, and
do,
yeah, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about?
Like I
All the
I
moving
think.
parts.
Well, unfortunately, it's just there's these two projects that are very close together. Bossa Nova and Silk Spoon have almost been like 8 weeks apart. So yeah, Silk Spoon should open in. Well, Bossa Nova's we're open now, and Silk Spoon is opening in 6 weeks. So just it's sometimes, when you're always open for business, there's always a chance that there's a little bit of annoying overlaps. So
Yeah.
CBD as well.
So do you
yeah,
feel?
CBD
Do you ever feel overwhelmed by
All the time.
this? Yeah.
all
You
the
do.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
it's a lot. It's a lot to
it
manage.
is a lot.
Yeah.
And I think, like, always been pretty good with compartmentalizing stuff. Like, I learned that very early in, like running Lee Ho Fook. Like, otherwise you just think about work while you're at home, and you're never,
Can't be
you're
present.
not enjoying anything, right? Because you sit there and you're just obsessed about all the other stuff that you should have done, or like, what do I do next? And so yeah, I still absolutely I still get overwhelmed.
Mm.
Yeah.
We got a bit of a fantasy question.
Tell me.
So if time and place wasn't an issue,
Sorry, the way that it's a fantasy question.
would you who would you like to collab with? Just one person that you could pick that you want to do a collab with, dead, alive.
Oh, I think
Who and why?
it's one person. I don't know. There's been a few, right? I think I always joke that like I'm a huge Kanye West fan. Like
Oh,
early
wow.
Kanye, like
So
late
good.
Kanye
Oh,
was a
yeah.
little bit controversial.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I remember because I was in high school when College Dropout came out. Like, it was amazing, and all his stuff back then used to just be like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like, so obviously trying to work with him would be really cool.
Wow.
But then. But I think just because he's creative and his lens is pretty cool, like a lot of the stuff that almost influenced the way I looked at art and and culture was kind of influenced by him.
He's definitely
Like
probably the person the best at building a brand.
Yeah,
he
but
has turned himself into such a brand that he has transcended all cultures. He's just uber famous.
Yeah, but I think like for example, his Touch the Sky video clip was amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like when he did the first Yeezys, they were amazing. Like his Sunday mass stuff was amazing. You know what I mean? And I think they're all like, it's so much creativity for such a long time that you kind of once I think everyone looks back on the stuff that he put out at the time he put it out. It was
Iconic.
pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
But then like Pharrell's doing really cool stuff at the moment, and I remember him when he was Skateboard P. You know what I mean? Like, I think, and it's good to see all these, I guess, genres of like culture kind of mashed together, I guess. But I love that style of
It's
activation.
so interesting that you have chosen, because we were thinking you were going to go down the route of a chef,
Yeah.
but you've gone for more kind of
It's interesting.
pop culture icons.
That's creativity. That's
Yeah.
Imagination. I love that. I actually really love the answer.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
expect
really
it.
cool. We didn't expect
But
it
yeah,
at
I
all.
didn't. I don't know. I used to be, I think, into high fashion, but I don't know. I just don't. I don't believe in it so much at the moment. I think it's hard. Like I love films and stuff, but there's not one kind of director, unless it's like Wong Kar-wai. But his stuff is really esoteric as well. Like I only really like 2 or 3 of his works. I feel like it's a fantasy of mine to be in it than
Yeah.
like to work with
To
him. You
work
know what I
with him,
mean?
yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
Of
I'd love
course.
to like do something with say someone like Guy Ritchie, for example.
Oh,
because
love
it'd
Guy
be cool,
Ritchie.
right? Like,
Oh my
just
God.
just like his
He's the
his
coolest. He's got such a
detail and
style.
his
Did you watch his new movie?
yes.
It's so
Yes.
Which one was that?
good.
Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Yeah,
That one.
that's
that
the
one's
one.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. On Prime.
On
It was
On Prime. Yeah, I saw
incredible.
the other
Haven't
day.
seen it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
also like another guy.
I like The
Ritchie.
Gentleman.
Classic
The
guy.
Gentleman's good.
Yeah,
The
the
Gentleman
Gentleman
is
is top,
unbelievable.
for sure.
Yeah.
The best is Snatch by far.
It's so
Snatched
good.
by Guy Ritchie.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
I
haven't
haven't
seen
seen that. No.
Oh,
Brad
bruh.
Pitt. Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
Brad
Snatch.
Pitt.
No,
Oh my
that's
God.
okay. So you got to watch 2. You got to watch Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, right? That's his original one, right? He had no budget doing that,
Very famous. for
right?
that one.
And then Snatch is when he got budget. Yeah, so and both very good. He
Okay, I'll
still shot
watch
them.
it
Yeah,
tonight,
they're-
for
and you'll
sure.
love them.
I saw you posting about badminton as well. Are you into badminton?
No.
You just
Did
watched.
I?
Yeah, because the Malaysian guy was playing.
Ah, right.
Yeah, I think you were just supporting the
Yeah,
Malaysian.
I was just. I don't know. I
Because
think.
we're heavily involved in the
Oh, yeah?
badminton. Yeah, we play
We love
badminton.
badminton.
We love badminton.
And just quickly, you said you don't believe in high fashion anymore because I'm really into.
Dude, me
into
too.
it.
Right? Like there's parts of it that I love, but then it's also like,
What's made you lose belief?
I don't know, it's just like I feel like we're in that time of culture where like to be cool you have to dress ugly, you know, and ugly is expensive. You know, it's weird, right? Like it's like I got so many cool points that like I can afford to dress ugly. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, like
I kind of
so-
resonate with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I think there's obviously there's nuances within the entire thing, and I think that is it's a kind of a trend.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of ugly, like homeless chic kind of a thing. But I think that there's obviously so many different designers and so many different ways that you can dress, right? I think that there's definitely elements of it that are cool, and then you just combine it with because I personally don't really like it either. I think it's bullshit that Balenciaga is going to sell you a pair of
I know.
$4,500
Yeah.
sneakers and they look like they've been worn for 2 years
Yes.
and they look trash. That's obviously, I think that's silly, but you know, there's also so many cool pieces that Balenciaga does too. They got like big coats and massive
Yes.
silhouettes and things that look and feel expensive. And I guess that's the part of fashion that I enjoy the most, where it's something that you would buy from a designer that's so unique that you couldn't possibly get it from somewhere else. You know what I mean? You couldn't go to Uniqlo and just buy it. It would have to be
Yes.
something that's that way. And I guess like it's all dependent on personal style and things like that. But yeah, I don't
On
think
that
you can lose
point,
belief in it.
Victor, do you have anything you would like to add to the podcast before we wrap it?
No, I
Yeah,
think
we're
this
so
is
close.
I'm glad I'm the first.
Yeah.
We're glad you're the first two.
Yeah.
For real, yeah. No, we've had so much
Cool.
fun.
Thank you very much for coming and chatting to us. We really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
No worries.
That's
Thanks,
it.
Victor.
That's a wrap.
All right, cool.
Wrapped.
Did that go for ages? That went for ages, eh?
Uh,
That was mad.
Okay, cool. All right. Oh, is that all right?
Yeah, man. That was so good.
so much.
No, my pleasure.
We didn't need to click anything on the voice.